Should you still be sitting an AFC South running back coming off a Week 12 injury? Is one NFC East rookie a must-play in his matchup this weekend? And has a new lead receiver emerged for a team in Florida? Plus, six-time FFPC league champion Scott Cobe hops aboard the show to talk about potentially panicking about the Patriots offense, how to handle the Pittsburgh backfield in Week 13, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour begins right now.
Stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all you Bulkaholics and Farrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to be discussing Tyler Higbee's struggles and what that means for you in the FFPC and the Football Guys League playoffs this week, whether Mike White can do it again this week, and six-time FFPC league champ Scott Cobe will pull in to analyze Chase Claypool's prospects this weekend without Darnell Mooney against that hapless Packers defense. And Jelani Woods, what is he going to do against the Dallas Cowboys, if anything, this weekend, and much more. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, you can do so at HSFFR. I am at Eric Balkman. You always check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com or at KFFSC Official on Twitter. Post on our Facebook page at Facebook.com/HSFFR2. If you want to connect with Scott Cobe, tonight's guest, he is at SJCobe1. That's SJCOBE1 on Twitter. Email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com if you have any questions for us. Send them in now. We'll try to get to all of them, all the tweets, all the emails, and the fantasy feedback segment later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course our producer and audio engineer. Our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and our producer and mutual friend Rob. Hey, have you checked out the weekly challenge with the FFPC? If you have and you didn't win, or if you have and you did win, remember, new contest each and every week at myffpc.com. There is no draft. There is no salary cap in this. You just choose the 10 players you want if you want to play without kickers and defenses. You choose the 12 players you want if you want kickers and defenses, and just ride them out. All you have to do is be in by Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and you are in the contest. Only one player per NFL team. There are no stacks. There are no hookups. There are no any quarterback, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end tandems. One player per team. That's what makes it so maddening and so much fun, more importantly. $35 to enter or $200 to enter. If you want to play in the 30-team format, please do so. 100-team format, hey, that's a lot of fun. But in the 10-team format, if you beat the 9 other teams in that contest, you will win a free entry into the 2023 FFPC main event, where you can play for $1 million as well. Programming reminder, in case you missed it, the RotoViz High Stake Lowdown went live on Tuesday night with the 5th place team finisher in the FFPC main event regular season this season, Pravir Srivastava. A lot of good stuff from him, talking about the FFPC playoffs and how he's trying to contend for a $1 million grand prize in the main event. Check that out at, youtube.com/FFPC fantasy or rotoviz.com/podcast. Remember, on this channel, to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified. I want to bring in our co-host tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, the guy I missed oh so much last week, and I want to wish him a belated happy Thanksgiving. Farrell Elliott. Welcome in, Farrell. Happy belated Thanksgiving. I hope it was a good holiday for you.
Thank you very much. It was football. I felt sorry for you out there while you were sailing the aisles, but you did it in very good company, and it looks like you had a marvelous time. I'm glad to have you back, and you're working on a new beard, obviously.
It's coming along.
Yeah. Okay. Good for you, buddy.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I had to shave it off because I just pick random times really to shave it off when it comes to it. And now that it's off, it's growing back now. And I'm sure by our Christmas episode coming up 3 weeks from today, it will be a Santa Clausian level beard coming up, no question. Let's get into fantasy football tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Bengals head coach Zach Taylor. This is not the news you wanted to hear if you're a Joe Mixon owner. He is still in the league's concussion protocol, according to Jeff Hobson on Twitter, which is interesting because he's been practicing all week. But again, you can practice and still be in the concussion protocol. Mixon did not play in week 12 against the Titans. And he would be active in, I think, a total of 50 plus in that Bengals Chiefs game this week if he can clear protocol on Saturday. If he can't, you're looking at Samaje Perine in the Bengals backfield, who was, I don't know what he put up last week, Farrell, like 18, 19 Kentucky FFPC points, something like that. I know he had 21 touches for 93 total yards. I think he got in the end zone as well. So the question here is, if Mixon can't clear protocol, is Samaje Perine a slam dunk second running back, slam dunk flex for you? And if Mixon is cleared, do we just, put all our faith in that he's going to play and get, there's not going to be a snap count at all? Does Perine still become a flex? Even though there could be some clarity here in this Bengals backfield, still kind of maddening for us as high stakes players.
Well, from a head injury, you don't have to snap count that because if a player can play, he can play. If he clears the protocol, he can play. And so that's the good news from there. Perine, for those that were wise enough to draft him in a best ball or the never too earlies, or who may have handcuffed Mixon with Perine, given the chance to play, he's a capable backup, as he proved last week. Fantasy drafters tried to replace him with Chris Evans last year. I think there was some holdover about how Cincinnati failed on fourth down and Perine was on the field. It's a very, very capable ball player. He's always averaged over 4.5 yards a carry since he's been in the league. I think he's averaging 4.2 this year. He does well with the opportunities he's given. He's 240 pounds. He's got a quick step and soft hands. Play him if Mixon's down and you've got him, or by some miracle that he's available on the waiver wire, definitely get him in your lineup.
What about, is there anything to be said for if Mixon's active, does Perine still enter the flex possibility? Or if you think Mixon is going to be active, he's going to get the lion's share of the touches?
No, if Mixon plays, Perine goes to the bench.
Got it. Okay. Jaguars head coach Doug Peterson this week said Travis Etienne is, quote, good to go. This according to John Oser on Twitter, who covers the Jaguars. Etienne was practicing in a limited capacity, all week after he hurt his foot in Baltimore. Remember, the Jaguars said that he was cleared to return that game. However, Doug Peterson wanted to play it safe. This is a guy who already had a significant foot injury. They decided to keep him out for the remainder of the game, despite Etienne saying he wanted to go back in. He gets the Lions defense this week, which is bad. The third highest EPA against the run this year. Peterson said Darrell Henderson is probably not going to be active against Detroit if Etienne is able to play. Jermichael Hasty, obviously, you want to make sure you still keep him on your roster because I would imagine he would be the guy you'd want to start if Etienne's not going to go. I think he's going to go. The question is, Farrell, again, same thing with Mixon. Are we concerned with the snap count with Etienne? If you have him in your FFPC league playoffs, your Kentucky playoffs, your Football Guys playoffs, do you just feel fully confident that if Etienne's active, you're going to play him and you're not going to be worried about a snap count?
Right. Yeah. Partial Etienne is better than anything else that they can bring, especially since Henderson is not available. I'm not a big believer in Hasty as a fantasy football player. He's 5'8", 200 pounds, and that puts him in the same weight class as Henderson. But sometimes when we're trying to separate players and when we're thinking about the depth chart at Jacksonville for the upcoming season, considering everything stays the same, you have to tip your hat to college scouting once in a while. Henderson was a third-round draft pick. Hasty, an undrafted free agent. I'm glad to see him in the league, and he occasionally has explosive plays, but I don't believe that Hasty is going to do anything for us fantasy football. And, we got a head coach here that's got a variety of running back issues. Peterson, he never had that in Philly, did he? We always knew who to start when he was up there. But you know what? Here, you start Etienne.
Couple of questions in the chat room tonight. We're going to start off with our man Broward Bravado. He's got a flex question. Is it Darius Slayton? Is it Tyler Higbee or Raheem Mostert? Again, this is tight end premium. He made his Football Guys playoffs in 2 of his 4 teams. Congratulations. We like to encourage that type of behavior, especially for viewers of the show. But this is interesting because, and we'll get into Higbee a little bit later on in the show, but this is a guy who you would think with no Cooper Kupp, no Allen Robinson, he would be collecting a ton of targets. That was not the case, my friend, last week. You have Darius Slayton, who I got to look up his injury status here, but I don't believe he practiced today. I'm going to have to verify that here. And then you have – go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I think Darius is sick. I think he's sick. I don't know. I don't think he's injured.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay. All right. I got it. Okay. So then you're looking at – let me look the last one up here. It was Raheem Mostert, Farrell.
Yeah.
And this is a guy, too, with Mostert. I believe he was cleared that he is going to play this week, but he's still got Jeff Wilson there. Raheem Mostert, in fact, with that knee injury, not even listed on the final injury report.
Good.
So let's break this in here. You have Mostert sharing carries. You have a situation where Tyler Higbee got skunked last week, even though no Cup, and obviously this week no Robinson. And then you have Darius Slayton. If you can only pick one, who's it going to be?
The bravado gets into the playoffs, and his best effort right here would be to concentrate on the running backs with Miami, even with the fact you're coming off 49ers throwing a shutout last time that defense took the field. They're a stout defense. But what Miami is successful with is down and distance. They're good on first down, and they create some opportunities for these running backs. They will both likely get an equal share of runs. Don't expect big, long drives against the 49ers defense. But I believe the athleticism of both Wilson and Mostert, playing against their old team with a head coach that knows that team through and through, there's a situation for some real big plays here. And I like Wilson and I like Mostert. I wouldn't play them both, but I'd play either one as my last flex on the team.
Okay, and then the other one that Broward asked for here in his Football Guys Players Championship playoffs. I have to scroll up and get it. Thanks for all the YouTube chats tonight or comments tonight. Raheem Mostert or Isaiah Pacheco, who is going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. You can only pick one. Who's it going to be?
If I have Pacheco and he's close to playing, I'm probably so passionate about this player, and I've been waiting for it all year, that I'm going to play Pacheco. That's the most difficult question he's got. If I want to play Mostert on one team, then Pacheco might get the nudge on the other. It's very, very close. Mostert, though, a great veteran player playing against the team that brought him into the league. I like the story. Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I'm gonna, the thing is, like, so Farrell, I know I've asked you this before, but just remind the viewers, how much do you pay attention to totals and point spreads when you're looking at breaking ties in your starting lineups in FFPC?
Well, totals more than spreads, because we kind of figure out how the game's going to go. We don't need the spread, and naturally an upset's an upset, and that's good if you have players on the upsetting team. However, that, for instance, the matchup with Detroit and Jacksonville this week, both teams can score and score frequently. So you're going to look at that and you're going to say, wow, I'm just going to get all these guys that I can into the lineup. It gives you pause because, the Miami defense and the San Francisco defense, two excellent offensive teams, questions in the backfield for the 49ers. You look at certain games and you're going to pay closer attention to that totals. But, at this point in the season, as Jason Kahn says, you're a ride or die kind of guy, and you're in the playoffs now in the FFPC. Make it work and play your best players.
We also had a question in the chat too, and maybe this is something that maybe begs further conversation, but to me it's open and shut. Lamar Jackson is not on the injury report. Broward Bravado is deciding between him and Mike White. Yeah, I know Mike White was awesome last week, but man, I can't sit Lamar Jackson at all.
No, you can't. You have the magic of Lamar Jackson in the red zone, and you have the magic of his ability to run his offense in the way that you pictured it being ran. And despite everything that we can say that we don't like fantasy-wise about Baltimore, Lamar Jackson isn't one of those. Now, it's been disappointing this year when compared to some of the other quarterbacks, and he hasn't had that prolific game. But that prolific game is sitting right there in the waiting room anytime. Mike White just had his big chance this past weekend, and I've been a big Mike White fan, and I've wondered why the Jets wouldn't give him a chance, but he's not going to have that game every week. Mike White's an interesting player, especially in our dynasty leagues going forward. I think he's now proven that he deserves a spot in this league. But Lamar Jackson is your man for your fantasy football this weekend. Don't overthink it. I know here we are in the playoffs. You've got less teams to manage in the FFPC because not all your teams made the playoffs, and you really want to make it count. So you start beginning to think about things like Mike White over Lamar Jackson. Do not do that, Balky.
No, I'm with you on that. Hudson Kern-Reeve from the Ivy Tower just wants to know if Demarcus Robinson is a start this week as well. He is not for me, especially in playoff week. I know, the thing is he's been looking good with getting more and more targets, as I look at his game logs here. Last week was kind of an outlier, 1 for 17, but 9 for 128, 6 for 64, 2 weeks before that. I think you're playing with fire with Demarcus Robinson this week. So for me, he's not a start. Obviously, desperate times call for desperate measures, but if you're still playing in fantasy football this late in the season, man, you got to be able to do better than Demarcus Robinson.
You have to, and just because you're picking on him now, Balky, because he's a former Raider, I see what you're doing there. You're throwing that out. And by the way, I don't know how to get a conversation. We're talking about Samaje Perine and Hasty on a week when Josh Jacobs proved that he is not only number one running back in the NFL, but the number one producer in line of scrimmage yardage or yards from the line of scrimmage. So I just want to throw those things out there about the Raiders. If we keep talking, we can get to Mac Hollins. What was the question? Oh, yes. Look, Lamar is overthrowing this player now. They seem to be on the same page. They're not on the same page anymore. And when Lamar hits him in the chest, guess what? DeMarcus hasn't been catching it. And that'll lead you to a 1-17. There's a reason why he's no longer a Raider. There's a reason why he was no longer a Chief. And if he's going to continue to be a big influence and hold his job in the NFL, he's going to have to start catching the few passes that are rationed out to him for the Baltimore Ravens. But I tell you, man, he gets open. You could do worse. I would have to choose between DeMarcus and Donovan Peoples-Jones, perhaps, this weekend. And it's a tough one with what you don't know about Peoples-Jones and Watson. But in that case, and the competition that they have on the field, I'm probably going to go Peoples-Jones. So, all these decisions are difficult, but I think what you've seen in the last few weeks, like our guy that asked us about Higbee, Mr. Bravado, you're compromised at quarterback, and you're terribly compromised at quarterback. Higbee's no longer even in the consideration of the conversation. So sometimes the players around you will get you there.
All right,
and if you ever want to get on this show and you can't get on it, do what I do in emergency situations, Balky. Just use your phone. It's the agent's answer to everything is use your phone.
Yeah, it's true.
Just use your phone.
So we got a question in on Facebook tonight from Steve Diaz. I'm assuming this is Dameon Pierce and not Alec Pierce.
It's got to be Alec Pierce.
No, I think it's got to be Dameon Pierce.
No,
okay. So let's figure this out. So we'll do two Pierces: Dameon Pierce, Alec Pierce, or Gus Edwards. Rank them, Farrell. For me, I'm going Dameon Pierce, Gus Edwards, and then Alec Pierce.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Dameon Pierce, Gus Edwards, and Alec Pierce, who runs routes to nowhere and looks good doing them. Someday he's going to be a player.
Indeed he is. I hope that helps out. By the way, Kern loves Donovan Peoples-Jones this week. I think I'm going to be forced to start him in a Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship game, which I'm not a fan of. I'm already behind the 8 ball with, I think, Fozzie. Actually, Jeremy Brock is ahead of myself and the Dizzle sharing a team there, but we'll see what happens there. Long way to go. We have Scott Cobe coming up in the green room. He's enjoying some lovely shrimp cocktail I have some scotch and soda in there for him. He will be here in a little bit. The last thing I want to mention here, Jimmy Garoppolo, slip of the tongue, maybe not the slip of the tongue, I'm not sure. He said that, I'm going to read the quote here from Jimmy Garoppolo this week about Jordan Mason.
Okay.
He makes it tough on defense, and I'm going to highlight the relevant text with the voice inflection. He makes it tough on defenses, and I think those are body blows that wear on you in the fourth quarter. So it'll be interesting to see a full game with him. Interesting stuff from Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, Christian McCaffrey, who was dealing with knee pain last week, said he, quote, dodged a bullet. He's ready to go. I don't believe he's on the injury reports. Obviously, McCaffrey's the guy. But clearly, Farrell, we can glean some stuff from here. Number one, we know Elijah Mitchell's out for the year. Number two, we're trying to figure out who the backup running back for the 49ers is going to be. And it certainly seems from this, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. So you should be picking up Jordan Mason. All right, it should be Jordan Mason, not Jimmy Garoppolo. He'd be an awful backup running back for the 49ers. So it should be Jordan Mason this week. I don't think I'm flexing him out. I know the Niners like to, they were trying to split touches between Mitchell and McCaffrey. I can't start Mason this week, but yeah, man, I'm trying to get him on all my rosters where he's still available.
I think that's a smart move, and let's watch and see what he does. Jordan Mason missed a lot of his senior year at Georgia Tech, and what's different about him than some of the backs that we've been talking about, he's 6'2", just short of 6'2", probably about 225 pounds, and his early returns in working with the 49ers, another undrafted running back, but in earning a spot on the team and getting on the field, he has done well after contact. He gets yards after contact, which is very, very important for all running backs. But in the way that they're going to use him as a banger around the goal line, a red zone guy, a short yardage guy who can break something. And I think that's what Garoppolo's saying. After he just continues to bang into bodies on the defense, you get the defenses tired. This guy can break one. He's between a 4.5 and a 4.6 at the combine. I think what you've got in this player is a little bit more will than skill, but sometimes that's what you need. This guy's getting his opportunity, and I don't think he's going to let it get. I don't think he's going to let it go by without him making the best of that opportunity, because he sees he can read the roster sheet too, and he's glad to be on the team, but he knows with the people that are on that team around him, these opportunities aren't going to come very often. So, yeah, good player to take a stab at as we get here later into the year.
In the famous words of the 20th century American poet Marshall Mathers, a.k.a. Eminem, you only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity only comes once in a lifetime, Jordan Mason. So make sure you are taking advantage of that. I got a guy who is going to come on the show right now who has taken advantage of his opportunities that he's had last year. He is a 6-time FFPC league winner. He was the runner-up last year in the 2021 FFPC Super Bracket Championship, and he's positioned multiple teams in the playoffs already in the FFPC main event this year. If you're smart, you're already following him on Twitter at SJCobe1. That's SJCOBE1. Please welcome into the program, Mr. Scott Cobe. Welcome back to the program, Scott Cobe. Welcome in, Scott.
Thanks, guys. How you doing tonight?
We're doing excellent. We're thrilled that we got you on. I apologize. Again, I've had multiple technical difficulties with StreamYard this week, but I'm glad we once again beat technology. We're having you on again. And hey, man, FFPC main event playoffs are underway. You got to be psyched with multiple teams in there, man.
I definitely am. I wish I had gotten the third team in, but I missed out by a little bit. So 2 teams in there is a great accomplishment for myself. So
yeah, and like take us through like the super bracket last year. If I remember correctly, you weren't necessarily one of the highest seeded teams, but you had a romp through that, just demolishing a lot of teams, and then you came up just short in the championship game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was a Mike Evans call between him and somebody else. I forget right now, but he'd been injured, and Schefter that morning had said he wasn't sure how much he was going to play. He was probably going to be limited snaps. And then when I started looking around, I'm like, I don't know if I want to take the 0 at Mike Evans if he only plays 10 snaps or whatever. So right. I benched him, and he ended up getting a touchdown, going for 13 points, and I lost by 4. So that cost.
It stinks. It's tough, man. But that is fantasy. And I'll tell you this, at least this is the feather in your cap. those sorts of things have a way of evening themselves out over the next, over the course of time. So maybe this will be the year that it pays out for you and you end up making a big run to the top of the FFPC.
I don't think you can trust Schefter. I think you can trust Balky. That's how I would do it. I would trust Balky. I would not trust Schefter. Schefter's got too much coming in on his telephone anyway, text and the guy's got 4 telephones. He left 2 of them at Starbucks at the combine. People are walking around going, "Where's Schefter? I got his phones." So I mean, you just listen to Balky.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Farrell. You're the man. I don't know how much Balky. I don't even know how much Balky listens to Balky. So take it for a grain of salt. All right, so let's get into some stuff that is really, and I know the questions I sent you they're heavy on the backfield, but like you just pointed out, like stuff like Mike Evans in week 17 last year, it's razor thin on these decisions, and we got to figure this out. And I know you can help the FFPC viewers on this night. Michael Carter officially listed as doubtful for the Jets this week. I can't imagine he's going to play. So who is the running back to deploy? Who's the running back to roster? How have you been treating the Jets backfield situation, Scott?
So I think it's gonna be a split where Ty Johnson gets the passing downs work, and Bam Knight gets the running downs work. I think Salah basically pointed it out after the game Sunday. He said that he ran really hard, really well, and that he was going to have a role going forward for the rest of the year. So if you believe in what Robert Salah says, it's going to be Bam Zonovan Knight as the lead back for the Jets, and then Ty Johnson's going to sprinkle into the passing downs role. So
if you could only start one of those guys, would you rather start the guy getting the volume in Zonovan Bam Knight, or would you rather start the pass catcher in Ty Johnson?
It's Zonovan Bam Knight, because if he gets 19 to 22 carries, goes for 75 yards and a couple of touchdowns, and you leave him on your bench, I mean, you paid a hefty price to get him in waivers this week. A lot of people did. So you're going to play him, especially if you miss like a James Conner or a Deontay Foreman this week. So
put your actions where you put your money. It's interesting. Have you always pronounced it Cobe? Cobe?
It's pronounced both ways. It's usually Cobe. So
well, I'll switch it to Cobe.
That's what I go by.
It is typical, but I mean, historically it's a great name. It's not only, it's biblical. It comes from, it comes from Jacob, and it's also there's a group in astronomy, an area of wisdom, and they call themselves Cobes, and it's fantastic.
I will say this, Farrell. I will point this out. Little known fact here. There used to be a basketball player in the NBA, God rest his soul, Kobe Bryant, but he went by Cobe Bryant after he found out Scott Cobe's incredible ascent through the high stakes fantasy football industry. He became Cobe Bryant after that. He went by Kobe. Scott changed all that.
Everyone tips their hat to fantasy football success, including all professional athletes and definitely all NFL players. And, I watched the game last night with great interest, and you will hear people talking about, is James Cook taking over the backfield in New England? And I'm using this great new analytical tool called the box score. And last night I used it, and I saw where they both got the same amount of carries. Now, Cooks was featured more in the passing game, but I think if you look at Buffalo, what I love about this team is if a player has the hot hand, he gets the ball. We've seen it with McKenzie. We're always going to see it with Diggs, but everyone else on the team, we've seen it with Dawson Knox from time to time, and we see it with the 2 running backs. It's fascinating to want to be in business with Buffalo Bills. Do you see it my way, or do you see one of these guys having the fantasy edge over the other? Because when I can get into any Bill in my lineup or on my 20-man roster, they're going in my lineup.
Absolutely, no question. And I think it's going to be a split here, because I think James Cook is producing at the right time for them, down the end of the season and getting ready for the playoffs. And they traded for Nyheim Hines because they had little confidence in James Cook, and now all of a sudden he's taken off and ascended. So I believe it's going to be a 50-50 split between Cook and Singletary, and Nyheim Hines is just going to filter in a little bit. So
Go ahead.
Got a lot of yards per carry, over 5 yards per carry, but Cook is the guy that's producing right now for them and taking the pressure off of Josh Allen. So
now I know in a this is going to depend upon how everybody's team looks, but in a vacuum, Singletary, Cook, Hines, are any of these guys flexible right now for you, given that, you do believe that it's going to be a split?
Cook on next week is the Bipocalypse 2.
Mm-hmm.
So Cook is going to be in a lot of lineups, as a flex, especially in championship week, because everybody remembers what Cook did on Thursday night. Singletary had a decent game as well, but I think Cook is the guy to own right now.
Interesting. Well, I like them both, and I'm just going to say whoever has that hot hand is going to rise in the game, and it could be either one of them. But Cook used to be rookies would hit the wall this time of the year. You would get less from them. It seems like this year we're getting more, and I compliment the coaches as how they're bringing them into the system. It's impressive.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, somebody taking over the number one position for a team, we have a situation in Jacksonville, Scott, that we should talk about here. Zay Jones, 19 catches in the last 2 weeks. Now, if we look at Christian Kirk, he only had 4 for 46 this past week, but he had 17 catches combined in weeks 9 and 10. Jaguars obviously off on the bye in week 11.
Yep.
Are both these guys startable? Is Zay Jones taking over? What was it, just an aberration that you could still feel good about starting Christian Kirk? What do you do with these two wide receivers?
Both guys are startable in my mind. I mean, they got Detroit this week, so I think both guys are going to feast, and that's great in the semifinal playoff matchup. So I would flex Zay Jones, and I would start Christian Kirk as my wide receiver too. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a day on Sunday against Detroit, and that's going to be huge for fantasy owners who, look at their bench and see, some guys on bye, some guys underperforming. Right now, you got to play the guys that are performing for you, and Zay Jones is definitely performing for you.
One of the other fantasy shows I do, I was on the air yesterday, and we were talking about sleepers of the week, studs of the week, so on and so forth. And my stud of the week was Christian Kirk, because I'm with you, Scott. I think he's going to blow up in that Detroit game. One of my co-hosts, his sleeper was Zay Jones. And I also said my sleeper of the week was Trevor Lawrence. I think even in a week where it's a playoff week in the FFPC and the KFFSC. But, man, I'm telling you, Trevor Lawrence is not a bad start, even in one quarterback leagues. I like him quite a bit this week. The Jaguars and the Lions, that game kicks off at 1 p.m. on Sunday. Right now, the Lions are a 1-point favorite, but the total's 51.5. That is just what you want to see if you have any Jaguars, if you have any Lions in that, for sure. And speaking of the Lions, Farrell has a question about the back.
Yeah, before I get to the Lions, were you aware that Josh Jacobs is one of the number one running backs in all of NFL and leading in yards per scrimmage and of all players? And I just wanted to make sure that you.
Who's he playing for next year, Farrell?
I don't know, but right now he's playing for the ascendant Las Vegas Raiders. I just wanted to, it's really not a Raider question, but I just loved walking around Planet Hollywood and seeing that Josh Jacobs was dropping to a 7th round draft pick. And I could have doubled him up with Jamal Williams. And how I wish I did, because I wasn't absolutely aware that Jamal Williams is plus 700 yards. And I think if he is not the leader, he's damn well close, the leader in rushing touchdowns in the NFL. And I think that's what we want for our Jacksonville players, who I mightily agree with you guys. And Balky is fanning the flames for Trevor Lawrence. And I would say, yeah, it's about time. And I'm just praying that Detroit can score the ball. And Jamal Williams is the guy that's been scoring it. And someone called me about week 6 or 7 and said, who should I start, this player or Jamal Williams? And, when you don't own a player, sometimes you're not as hip to everything that he's doing. And I had to think about it a minute. Unfortunately, I went to Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams, every week start. Is that right, my friend? And how do you balance that with Swift, as now we understand that Swift's getting healthy?
So he's off the injury report, but I have no trust in Swift at all.
None at all.
I've drafted Jamal Williams all over the place. My home leagues, FFPC, every place that I could draft him, I drafted him because I could see a scenario where Jamal Williams was going to take over that backfield and was gonna outperform DeAndre Swift because DeAndre Swift gets hurt every year.
All
So
right,
I have a little bit of trust in DeAndre Swift, but I have a boatload of trust in Jamal Williams because he gets the ball down at the 10-yard line. So
Are you genuinely a trusting fellow?
I usually am.
I hear you talking about playing fantasy football a lot of different places. You did not mention the KFFSC. Where are you from with this pleasing accent of yours?
Boston.
I love it. Could you find Kentucky on a map?
Yes,
we got something to talk to you about then, my friend. We got to have you down here. We need somebody from Boston playing here in the KFFSC.
I know the guy that got me into the high stakes, one of the guys, he plays KFFC and he raves about it. He loves it. So,
who is that?
Anthony Venuti.
Oh, we love him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a little bit of NFL running back trivia this year, guys. Number one, Farrell, I don't know if you know this, but Mark Davis earlier this week put in a trademark request with the United States government for the phrase, not Sin City, Win City, which will be a Raiders tagline going forward if the patent office has anything to say about it.
You know the difference between Mark and his father?
What's that?
Al wouldn't have asked for permission.
He just would have done it.
It
just doesn't.
Yep. Catch up with that stuff later.
Tied in the NFL right now for fourth place in rushing touchdowns is Farrell's Josh Jacobs and the rookie KW3. That's Kenneth Walker. They both have 9. In third place, it's Derrick Henry with 10. Second place, Nick Chubb has 12. And a guy in first place leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns. His previous season high in his career was 4 back in 2017. Shout out to Jamal Williams, who is leading the NFL with 13 rushing touchdowns this year, guys. 13 rushing touchdowns. Absolutely insane. Good for him. I want to flip this. Now, Scott, being in Boston, are you a Patriots fan?
I'm not a Bill Belichick fan, but I am a Patriots fan.
All right. I guess this is a good question. The question should be, are you a Matt Patricia fan? Because last night we saw Mac Jones, and we all saw the tweet today where he had some choice words for Matt Patricia. And who knew that having a defensive coordinator, a guy with a defensive background, calling offensive plays, who knew it wouldn't turn out well? I never saw that coming. But he had some choice words on the sideline for Matt Patricia. Kendrick Bourne actually called out the coaching staff as well about the play calling. And I got to wonder, this could make one of two things, right? This could be a squeaky wheel gets the grease. Maybe we see Mac Jones bombing the ball down the field more to Jacoby Myers and Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne next week. Or maybe this is massive concern where Jacoby Myers is a low-end flex and Ramondre Stevenson is running back, and that's all you want to mess around with the Patriots players. How are you viewing the situation?
That's all I want to mess around with. Kendrick Bourne's been in the doghouse since training camp, and I don't know why. And I think it was, I heard a rumor that he was late to a meeting, and that's a Bill Belichick special. If you're late to a meeting, you go right in the doghouse. So, yeah, Ramondre Stevenson and Jacoby Myers, to a lesser extent, are it for me. Mac Jones has just regressed because of Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. So those are the two guys that I would stake my fantasy playoff life to.
We have a question from – oh, wait a minute. Hold on. This might not be a starter sit. I beg your pardon. I think I misspoke. So Dave the Dizzle Gerzak. Now, Scott, you play Dynasty, so this is good.
Yes.
Dynasty Superflex. Would you rather, which side of the trade would you have? Would you rather have Russell Wilson or would you rather have Geno Smith? Dynasty Superflex.
Geno Smith.
See, now I answered Geno right away too, and I thought it was a starter sit this week, which, to me, it's Geno, no question. Absolutely. But now for a Dynasty thing, I think I'd still say Geno Smith. Farrell, is that how you would fall in on it as well?
Oh, hell yes, Geno Smith. And I don't have any other commentary because Hudson Kern-Reeve is putting commentary here, and he's using words that I don't recognize. I hate when he does this, so I got to look it up.
Yeah,
where I can see what he's talking about. But yeah, it's Geno Smith, guys. I believe that it may be closer to over for Russ than any of us imagine.
Yeah,
Certainly not that the Denver Broncos imagine, because they're going to be paying that piper for a while as well. Just really, and I brought this. We don't need to rehash it. We got other questions to ask. Farrell wants to ask about Jamar Chase here in a little bit, but I will say this: like, these are the tales as high stakes players that we look at. How did we miss out on this Denver Broncos offense? How did we screw this up? How did we think that Russell Wilson was going to inject life in this and make Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy super relevant, get a good tight end out of it? Obviously, the Javonte Williams injury didn't happen, but this is something that we will explore all offseason, trying to figure out how to not make that same mistake again. And just certainly depressing. However, anybody who drafted Bengals this year, Farrell, is singing a different tune.
And we were talking about Travis Etienne. I think this is a quick question. Yeah. If we're going to start Etienne because we think whatever we can get from him would be better than a lot of other running backs available across the league. I wonder if, guys, that this concept of adopted from baseball, pitch count or snap count, is even legitimate in a player like Jamar Chase, because once he gets on the field, if he's producing, he's not going to come off the field. Competitors like this, you can't get them off the field. So I think my question is really a non-question. Chase plays, Chase is in your lineup.
100%. 100%. Because Burrow could throw 2 passes to him, and he could get 95 yards and 2 touchdowns.
And it's just like your Mike Evans example from last year when you were listening to Old Boy when we should have been listening to Balky.
Balky, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
100%.
So
but
dumb. Okay.
That goes. If the Bengals are playing Jamar Chase, he starts for my fantasy team.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's the adage that I go by. So
yes, sir.
All right. Let me throw this at you. I brought this up with Matt Ward from Brodo Fantasy on the Better Sports Network High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Wednesday. We were talking about Jamar Chase.
Yep.
What if you're in this situation? What if you have Jamar Chase, but you also have T. Higgins, Christian Kirk, Devontae Adams, Cortland Sutton, Juju Smith-Schuster, okay? And you also have at running back Josh Jacobs, James Conner's on bye.
Jamal Williams.
So, okay. Yeah, I don't have Jamal Williams. So, no, this is a KFFSC team where I have really good receivers on it. So, I guess at that point, you're still playing Chase, right? You're playing Chase over Cortland Sutton. You're playing Chase over Juju Smith-Schuster. And would you play Chase over Christian Kirk?
No. Yeah.
No.
It's tough.
And that one's close at least. Okay.
I think Kirk's going to have a huge day against Detroit. So, that's a tough.
Okay, well, either way, then I'm still sitting Smith-Schuster and Sutton over Chase. Yeah. Okay. All right, so then forget it. I screwed up. It was. I
don't know about you, Mr. Cobe, but if I had a roster like that, I'd be embarrassed to, I would just not want people to know I had that kind of luck going.
This is a dynasty team. So this has been blood, sweat, and tears, Farrell.
I see. It's been built with care. Obviously.
Right. Yes. A lot of love. Built with a lot of love, tender care, some sugar, spice, nutmeg on that one. It's a fine souffle right now.
It is a souffle.
Yeah.
That's a great team. A lot of trades happened, I think.
It did. Yeah, it's true. So Najee Harris. Now I didn't see the practice report today, Scott, but he said he's ready to go. He's going to play right now. If you have, so now here's the other thing is like I have a couple other leagues in Kentucky where I've actually been benching Harris because he's just been so bad this year. Is there something to be said for Jaylen Warren as a flex this week, or is it a situation where if Harris is active, you can't really afford to play Jaylen Warren at a flex this week?
You can't really afford to play Jaylen Warren because what if Najee plays the whole game? I mean, these backfield situations are so tenuous right now. I mean, you paid all this money to get Jaylen Warren. You paid all this money to get the San Francisco running backs. You paid all this money to get Zonovan Knight, Ty Johnson. I wouldn't play Warren. I would be too afraid in a playoff atmosphere, semifinal atmosphere, that he's going to come up well short of what you hope he's going to come up with. So I probably would not even play Jaylen Warren.
How do you feel about Najee Harris this week then, Scott?
Very, very tenuous on him, too.
And you guys aren't even talking about Benny Snell.
Yeah. Okay, well, throw Benny Snell in that, too.
Yeah, he's another Kentuckian.
Yeah. I would try to avoid it if I could. I really would. Because Najee plays, he could go out in the first quarter like Josh Jacobs with his cap. Jalen Warren, you put in your lineup, and you got to hope Najee doesn't play a lot. Benny Snell, you put in your lineup, you got to hope Najee don't play a lot. So you got to avoid it.
You're watching the game with one eye.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because in the semifinal matchup, you're going, this guy's is up by 20 points, and I got to hope Jalen Warren gets like 15 and somebody else gets like 10. It's hard. It's hard. I would avoid it. I just would.
We got a question from YouTube here. The professor, Prof. Hudson Kern Reeve wants to know, is Christian Watson still a WR2 this week? WR2 to me means top 25 receiver. And I don't know about you guys, but I've always believed touchdowns are fluky. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not making this up. So obviously we all know that Christian Watson had missed a lot of the season, right? He had the concussion, he had the soft tissue injury, he had the knee scope in the after training camp. So if you now, this is, I know, a stupid exercise, but it's still fun to bring up. With Christian Watson, what he's done so far this year in his limited time, he is on pace for, it extrapolated out to a 17-game schedule, 68 catches, okay, solid, whatever, 1,500 plus yards, that's awesome, and 34 receiving touchdowns. 34 touchdowns for Christian Watson this year. That's what he's on pace for. Now, I have not, I know, like I said, touchdowns are fluky for me. So I have not been I only own him in a couple of leagues. And I haven't been playing him because, again, I have some decent receivers in that. But the thing is, you look at that play last week against the Eagles where he catches that crossing pattern, takes it to the house. He just has immaculate speed. I can't predict something like that. I would be fine starting him as my third receiver this week. But, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's sort of where I'm at on Christian Watson. Scott, do you have any thoughts on Christian Watson against the Bears this week?
He's a wide receiver 3 or flex because it's the Chicago Bears. You see what the Jets and Mike White did to them last week?
Right, yep.
Christian Watson's going to do is going to be phenomenal. I think he's going to probably get another touchdown. Probably going to get about 80 yards on 5 or 6 catches. So, yeah, he's in my lineup. If I have him, he's in my lineup.
No, Eddie Jackson.
What about the quarterback position at Green Bay? Who's going to play quarterback this week?
Yeah, it's going to be Rodgers this week.
Rodgers,
yeah, it's going to be Rodgers. And
eliminated yet, so it's going to be Rodgers. I think after the bye, that could be a different story.
Rodgers has said publicly numerous times this year. He reiterated it this past week that he wants to play until they're mathematically eliminated. And then he said this week, when that happens, he's going to accept it, or he's going to not accept it. This is the Rodgers word games we always play. He's going to look at it with an open mind without bitterness or resentment. Okay. That could mean a lot of things. But my feeling is the Packers have a 3% chance of making the playoffs at this point. The teams that they need to lose the rest of the way play each other. Absolutely. So it's not, it's not working out that way. Even ties don't help them. So my feeling is the Packers are probably going to be mathematically eliminated. Maybe not this week, but next week. So when they come back after their week 14 bye, it's probably going to be the Jordan Love show, and it probably should be the Jordan Love show. I want to get here on another Jets question here. I think this is from Broward Bravado. Yeah, he wants to know, and guys, I don't really have anything glowing to say here. He wants to know what's the feeling on Elijah Moore. I think he had 2 catches last week. One was a pretty big one. And he looked good on it, but I don't feel confident starting him. Scott, do you?
No, not at all. I mean, yeah, he had 2 catches last week. Yeah, he had some yardage, but until I see him consistently do it, I can't put him in my lineup. I just do it.
Bravado just wanted to ask a guy from Boston about a Jet. Because you're playing here, Bravado, you're playing here. You got here without us. You really don't need us to help you figure that one out. Although I needed it, I started Moore twice this year and got 0 from him each time. Finally released him because I didn't want to be tempted. Bravado, that's the answer. You should release him. There's one more week of free agency too, actually. So go ahead and release him.
Then we need the Jets to release him then too, and then it'd be fun.
How many dynasty teams you play at FFPC?
I have like 8, I believe.
That's a good number. I went from 0 to 1, from 1 to 3, and I'm probably going to 8 this year. I'll try to copy you on that. When Balky and I were talking early summer, we couldn't get by the fact that we didn't want to explore the second wide receiver position with Baltimore. And we liked Duvernay. We liked Porsche. Is it Porsche? Is it Porsche?
Prochet.
James
Prochet.
James, South Carolina, right? So
Yep.
we like those players, and then we felt real smart because we gave it out. Nobody listened, but we did give it out, and Duvernay 2 touchdowns in week 1, and we think we are on our way.
Yep.
Now we're dealing with a player. He had one outlier game where he had 7 targets. If you take targets, and Balky is always teasing me about talking about targets, so I'll talk about them tonight because there's no catches to talk about. So let's just talk about targets. He's averaging 3 targets a game.
Yeah.
Now help me out because Dynasty, I tend to want to hang on to players too long. You're still hanging on to Duvernay. What do you see in this player that keeps him on your roster when I know I can tell by talking to you, you have depth, you have understanding of the depth charts in the league, and maybe there's other guys to tempt you with that roster spot.
I see a talented receiver with upside. And usually my last receiver spot, and he's my last receiver spot, is geared toward, in Dynasty especially, not in redraft, but Dynasty, is geared toward talented upside guys who could perform in the future. Lamar has been not great the last few weeks, so that's been kind of tempered. So my temptation to drop him has become more and more and to look for somebody else in that instance. But for right now, I'm keeping him, and I'm hoping that Lamar gets on track here and Duvernay down the stretch has a decent showing. I'm not looking to start him every week. I'm just looking for the upside that if I need something, it's there and I can just plug him in.
That's sound logic, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so that's why in my dynasties, that's my philosophy. Last receiver spot or last running back spot.
Like that.
Like Mir White would be a guy that I'm going to take at closely more and more because who knows what happens with Josh Jacobs. He should be in Vegas next year, but you never know. You never know.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is I had Zamir White on a lot of my because I waited. You always draft these high upside running backs in the mid rounds or whatever. And I don't know what it was. Probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I cut Zamir White off of all my redraft leagues. But I still the dynasty leagues. I still hanging on to him. They're just again until we see what happens with the Raiders and what they're going to do with Jacobs and quite frankly what they could do in free agency or the draft. I mean, maybe Zamir White's value's neutered after that, but he's worth hanging on to right now.
But if they're going to make that Win City pay off, they better hang on to Jacobs.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. That the free agent chase for Josh Jacobs in a league that has shown that unless you are the elite of the elite, you are not getting a massive contract.
Exactly.
Coupled with Jacobs' performance this season, it is going to be so. And I know it's his livelihood and everything, but it's going to be so entertaining for us to watch this, to see what happens, how NFL teams treat him, and the bidding war that may or may not happen with Josh Jacobs this offseason.
He can't catch passes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, I was talking
50 catches later, he can't catch
but here's the thing. So I was talking with Pravir Srivastava on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown on Tuesday about this. He's in 5th place in the FFPC main event regular season. And I looked at his roster. Nick Chubb in the 4th round, Josh Jacobs in the 8th round. And I said, look, man, like I know a lot of players devalue Chubb and Jacobs because they are not historically known as pass catchers. But at some point, he interrupted me. He's like, yeah, I know. And when Josh Jacobs was never the plan in the 8th round. Nick Chubb was never the plan in the 4th round because I thought they'd be gone by then. Took him, even though he wasn't in love with them. And now you look at Chubb, I just mentioned it, 2nd in the NFL in touchdowns. Josh Jacobs absolutely crushing it this year. They look awesome. His team is awesome and positioned to win $1 million too. So,
well, yeah, and then he discovered the box score, which will help you. That analytical,
the original analytics, OG analytics, the box score.
Back to that.
Good stuff. Scott, email here from Alan, Piscataway, New Jersey. Is there any upside to Chase Claypool with Darnell Mooney out against Green Bay on Sunday afternoon? Thanks, Scott. That is Alan Piscataway. Thank you for the email. Thanks for watching. We certainly appreciate it. Chase Claypool was taken off the injury report today, as was Justin Fields. So those guys should be playing against the Packers on Sunday, 1 o'clock kickoff. And a total on that, I think, went up a little bit. Yeah, it's up to 44.5 right now. Is there any upside with Chase Claypool? Would you be looking to play him as a second flex and football guys in the main event this week?
Not at all. Not at all. Justin Fields loves Equanimeous St. Brown, Velus Jones, Byron Pringle. Montgomery gets some catches sometimes. So Claypool is in that. And Cole Kmet, too, is another guy that gets a lot of targets. So I can't stack Claypool.
So, Scott, I happen to agree with you, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. The Bears gave up a second-round pick to get Chase Claypool on this roster. Is there something to be said for Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator there, to be scheming Claypool into this offense, given the draft capital they gave up? Or are you still just like, look, Balky, forget it. You're barking up the wrong tree. I'm not going to endorse Claypool here.
You're barking up the wrong tree. I'm not endorsing him. If you traded all that capital, you got to give this guy a shot. He's got to be a number one. You got to target him at least to see what he can do. You're not going to playoffs. You're not going anywhere. Let's see what he can do down the stretch here. And if he performs, you have your number 2 wide receiver next year.
Yeah, I think Claypool is a wonderful player, but now that and everybody knows, and I don't have to go into that, but my father had a great expression about guys. He would say that guy couldn't stand prosperity. And, so here you are in the FFPC playoffs, and you say, you know what, I got a great team here, but what about Claypool? He's what Chicago's got. Let me see how I can – no, don't mess this up with starting Claypool.
Right.
Let's just don't do that this weekend. He didn't get you here, so let's find somebody else that's going to keep you here. It's not Claypool. And it hurts me so much to say that. It will hurt you to climb into your head and find us what we all want is that sleeper player, because you can see the questions. Everybody's looking for a sleeper. Everybody still wants in this championship week a sleeper to put in the lineup. And then I want you to tell us who that guy is that's going to crash and burn, that stud player perhaps, or that player you've been counting on that you won't start this weekend. We've talked about a lot of players, so you can't use any of those Jacksonville guys as your sleeper.
I'll give you 2.
Okay.
Alvin Kamara of the Saints.
What is he? Is he's the stud that's going to crash and burn?
Well, that's one. Here's another one. Mike Evans. A lot of people Mike Evans in your lineup. Marshawn Lattimore is back this week. It's a no-go for me.
And Evans is coming off that big 5.0 performance last week.
Absolutely. People
point that out to you.
Well with them. If I have another receiver on my bench that I think is going to perform, a la Zay Jones, I'm putting him in over Mike Evans this week. I'm just doing it. And, another guy that could crash and burn is Jonathan Taylor. That's another.
Yeah. He's been doing that. I don't know. He's pretty much ashes at this point.
Yeah, but
how many times he's crashed and burned this year.
Started to ascend a little bit. But against Dallas this week, I think game flow and game play is going to dictate. Taylor might not get his
I can go with that.
So.
Just as I thought, maybe did I have an email on this? Maybe I do have an email. As long as we're talking about Dallas and Indy, Chris in Plano, Texas, Scott, is Jelani Woods a must play this week against Dallas? Now, Jelani Woods did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. He did get in a limited practice this week, but he's coming off that big game against Pittsburgh, and it's tight end premium here. Knowing that he was an uber talented guy, still is an uber talented guy, was highly thought of by a lot of people in the industry in the pre-draft process. Jelani Woods against the Cowboys this week in a tight end premium league. Do you have to find a way to get him in your lineup?
Not at all. I wouldn't. If you're risking your playoff life on Jelani Woods, good luck. I want to play. Play the guy lineup because I think he went off earlier this year for a big game, and then nobody heard from him until last week. So I can't play him. I just can't do it.
It's a situation where you would have to be injured, compromised, quarterback isn't available.
Yep.
Your guys, and then he's the best of what's left.
Yeah.
But how do you understand what Matt Ryan is trying to do other than to find somebody who has separation from a defender. I just can't count on it.
Right.
It sounds like, guys, he's not only not a plan A or B for you. This is more like a plan W or X, it seems like.
Yeah, it is for me because in the tight end premium leagues, I went after Njoku big time. My backup tight end in some of those leagues is Austin Hooper, and I would feel more comfortable playing Austin Hooper.
All right.
There are some disparaging comments in the chat room regarding this talented Chase Claypool. I'm just shocked at the veracity of what's going on there. Yeah.
I'm going to say that, speaking of comments in the YouTube chat, I want to apologize to Shahira Woods, the mother of Jelani Woods, because nobody said anything good about your boy tonight. And
I did.
Besides
I like him.
Besides Farrell. So for sure, Shahira Woods will be sending a Christmas card to one Farrell Elliott this year for sure. And maybe you'll be sending a Christmas card to the FFPC, Scott Cobe, when you are cashing $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event this year. Time will tell. You certainly have positioned two of your teams to do it. Congratulations on all your success so far. Thank you for joining us on the show tonight. We will all continue to follow you on Twitter at SJCobe1. That's SJCOBE1. Thank you so much, man. We will do this again soon. I promise you.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a good night.
You got it. Scott Cobe, ladies and gentlemen, the six-time FFPC league champ. Got a couple of teams in the FFPC main event playoffs that he will be looking to position near the top of the leaderboard going forward. Okay, we are over time, but I do want to get to these questions. We'll kind of go rapid. We never do rapid fire. It's not really our way. Farrell, you are good at talking, and I love hearing myself talk. So let's face it, this is not going to be rapid fire. Ken in Southfield, Michigan. Do I roll with a sick Treylon Burks against the Eagles over Adam Thielen hosting a tough Jets defense? Now, I believe he is meaning the traditional connotation of the word sick, not the ones the kids are using nowadays, because I do believe Treylon Burks is battling an illness right now. Would you start him over Adam Thielen this week, Farrell?
Treylon's been having all kinds of illness issues since he got there, but he looks better. And what does better mean? He's got 10, 11 catches over the last 2 games. In other words, he's an ordinary NFL wide receiver. By the way, it's Farrell and Woods 32, Dave Turp and Burks 24 in our contest. I know all the listeners want to know that. Hell no, you're not going to put Thielen on the bench. Thielen will know how to get open against these New York Jets, and he probably won't be doing it against Sauce Gardner, who will be deployed elsewhere. Thielen is your man. He'll just, when Kirk Cousins can't get the ball to Jefferson, he'll look over there, and Thielen will be settled in the middle of the field, settled on the sidelines, just waiting for the ball. He'll catch it and step out of bounds. And then at the end of the game, you'll have 7 for 70 and maybe a score and a fantasy football win. And Burks will have another tremendous game of 5 catches and 50 yards.
Yeah, I thought I was saying 8 for 86 for Thielen and a touchdown there. And I think you hit the nail on the head with Sauce Gardner. Yeah, they're still going to force the ball over to Justin Jefferson, but Adam Thielen is going to reap the rewards of not having Sauce Gardner on him. So I'm going to play him over Burks this week. I was never still not a huge Treylon Burks fan. Perhaps I'm wrong in that, but I'm definitely playing.
I'm a Dave Turp fan.
I know you're a Dave.
Congratulations!
Hey, congratulations to Dave Turp too.
Yes.
By the way, welcoming in baby girl Stacy. I think was right before Thanksgiving, if I remember correctly. So congratulations to Turp and Mrs. Turp on that. That's awesome to see. Dennis in Sacramento. What's going on with Tyler Higbee? Should I bench him in favor of the tight end he's playing against this week in Noah Fant? That is Dennis in Sacramento. Farrell, you're a smarter guy than me. How does Cooper Kupp go out? How does Allen Robinson miss or at least go out of the game early? And Tyler Higbee is a complete non-factor for the Rams. No Matthew Stafford this week. John Wolford's in there as well.
Yeah, John will never get through the progressions to get to Tyler Higbee. Is the Rams' record? What is it? Do you know what the Rams?
Oh, it's super bad.
It's super bad. Awful, and it's Tyler Higbee is a 29-year-old tight end who does well when targeted with a veteran quarterback who knows how to deliver him the ball. We don't have that this weekend. The other tight end was Noah Fant.
Yes.
Noah Fant's an easy choice here because He's in an offense which features 3 tight ends at about 35% of the time. He's the most athletic of the group. He'll get free. He'll catch the ball. He has his ceiling is not that high because all those guys are getting open and all of them are getting balls. A great position for the Seahawks. Short answer is Noah Fant, 3 to 4 catches, maybe some breakaway yardage because he can run with it when he gets the ball, and perhaps a touchdown, although it seems like Disley and the other guy, I think it's Parkinson, seem to get a lot of targets in the red zone. But yeah, Fant over Higbee here all day long.
I'm going to agree with you, but I'm also going to say I hate both these guys this week. The Seahawks are 7-point favorites in a total with 40.5. And obviously there's Metcalf there. There's Lockett. There's not a lot to like about the offenses this week. I think Kenneth Walker is in for a good game, but outside of that, man, I'm trying to look elsewhere. If you're in this situation, yeah, it's Fant, but my God, try to look for somebody else.
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. Daryl in Tulsa. What's up, party people? No Kyler Murray for me this week, and I picked up Mike White. Is he a better start against the Vikings than Jimmy Garoppolo is at home against the Finns? Thanks so much. That's Daryl in Tulsa. Yeah, Mike White. That game is in New York, right? Am I reading that wrong? Against the Vikings? No, it's in Minnesota.
Yeah,
it's in Minnesota. Okay, so I can't do it. I'm going to start Jimmy Garoppolo with all those weapons at home against the Dolphins. It's like I think the Dizzle was saying this in the chat. The quarterback that gets to sleep in his own bed the night before the game already has a leg up on the competition. So I'm going to say Garoppolo over Mike White this week.
I'm going to counter with the possibility that you should consider White if you believe the Viking defense is going to give him what's underneath. And because he can take advantage of it and he can stack up those yards. And Garoppolo relies on run after catch from those strong wide receivers to get the ball in the end zone. Seems like he targets number 15 more as a receiver in the red zone than anyone else. I think it's close. It's overthinking it. It's trying to be too cute. What are you doing in the playoffs with Garoppolo and White anyway? I don't know. But nevertheless, it's a lot closer than you think it is, but I would probably call Garoppolo and make that call and say that's my guy.
This is why
White's interesting this week.
And this is why you always plan ahead, right? I mean, like I'm assuming this dude had Murray. I'm assuming he picked up Garoppolo to pick, when Murray was hurting, but you got to have somebody else better. And I said this too, like this is something I learned, not that I want to get into it here as we're 7 minutes overtime, but this is something I said that I learned this year that in KFFSC especially, I am not going to go to battle with one quarterback anymore. I just can't do it. It let me down in too many leagues where I had Dak Prescott, and it killed me from the get-go. I cannot do it anymore. Matthew Stafford, another perfect example too. It's just good business to have two quarterbacks on your team. You never know which one. Think about all those Tua Tagovailoa teams who are drafting him as the 14th, 15th quarterback off the board, and all of a sudden they're starting him every single week. So that's something I will fix for 2022 or 2023. I promise you. Final email tonight, Paul in Omaha. Hey, Balky and Farrell, I know Balky is not strong enough to do it, but would you bench Ezekiel Elliott on Sunday Night Football against the Colts in favor of Isaiah Pacheco? Yeah, you're right. I'm not strong enough to do it. I'm going to play Elliott against the Colts over Pacheco. Farrell, what would you do?
He's from Omaha, so he should call Brock or Schroeder and ask that question and leave us alone. Both those guys that's where he needs to be. Ezekiel Elliott is making it work. He looks healthy. That's what you want to do. But that's an intriguing question. And I congratulate the final emailer of the night for giving us probably the best question. But no, I like Ezekiel. That was not a Dave Turp question.
No.
Turp would take whoever was backing up the other running back and say you should start him too over Ezekiel. The Stillwaters run deep in Philadelphia.
Exactly. You are right. Elliott, too, by the way. The Cowboys are 10.5-point favorites against the Colts. So obviously a positive game script for Elliott there. The Chiefs are only 2.5-point favorites, and that the total is almost 10 points higher in that Chiefs-Bengals game. But still, I know that there's people say, "Why? How are you benching the starting running back on a 9-2 team? Giving away 2.5 points? You got to find a way to get him in." I'm going to find a way to get him out. I'm going to play Elliott this week. I think I'm with you. Obviously, Hudson Kern-Reeve, our resident not only Ivy League professor, but Cowboys fan, loves the Ezekiel Elliott part of the equation here. He is starting Elliott as well. We certainly appreciate that, Kern. And I appreciate Farrell Elliott hopping aboard once again, spending his Friday night with me when he could be scouting all the players in this Pac-12 championship game that's going on between SC and Utah. SC, which is losing, by the way. So that'll be a fun way to end up my Friday night here. Farrell, thank you so much for joining me. We will do this again exactly 23 hours from now, next Friday, when we'll have another great guest and your shining face and great fantasy analysis.
Thank you, Balky. And I want to tell everyone that listens next week that they will have another commentary about how you have moved up the boards in various KFFSC contests, and you are planning your first trip of 2023 to be the KFFSC Super Bowl party and draft, where you have already made your reservations and committed to attending. Fantastic.
That is the plan. I have not made reservations.
We don't go off plan. Once plan's made, we stay with the plan. We do not go off plan. Yes, good to.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing right now is how the KFFSC has experienced exponential growth in the last 10 years and continues to become one of the dominant forces in fantasy.
We want football. You to be able to stand prosperity, Balky. You get down here for the Super Bowl.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Farrell. We'll do this again Friday, dude. Thanks. Have a great weekend. Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. And he doesn't work in sales per se, but he could be a gajillionaire if he did, because he is that good at it. I want to thank Scott Cobe, Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryson, of course, each and every one of you for watching tonight. Reminder, if you did not see the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with the 5th place finisher in the FFPC main event regular season, Pravir Shrivastava, make sure you're checking that out at youtube.com/FFPC Fantasy, or the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown page, rotoviz.com/podcast. It should be in the rotation on there. As I said, we will be back next Friday at 10/9 Central. The RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown will be back right here on this YouTube channel on Tuesday night at 10/9 Central. We'll be talking with the 10th place finisher in the Football Guys Players Championship regular season, Daniel Priestner, a.k.a. Joe Van Gogh. He will be joining me, and we'll be talking a little fantasy football, FFPC main event Football Guys League Championship week. We'll get you set for week 14. Reminder that the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network goes live Wednesday at 10/9 Central, not only in the Better Sports Network app, but YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, all those. You can watch us live 10 to midnight on Wednesday night. So we will take you all the way up to the midnight hour, myself and another great guest from the industry. Play the FFPC Weekly Challenge, no draft, no salary cap. Draft the 10 players you want if you are playing in the slim version, the 12 players if you want if you are playing in the version with kickers and defenses. And you can play for $30. You can play for $200. 30-team format, 100-team format, and a 10-team format where if you just beat the 9 other teams in the contest, you will get a free entry into the 2023 FFPC main event where you can compete for $1 million. Remember, here's what you do as we close out the video tonight. Thank you for watching all the way. YouTube appreciates that. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I know you already are. And, of course, comment on the video, which many of you have been doing. And, of course, share the video with all your friends, whether it's to say, hey, look at this great fantasy analysis from Balky and Farrell and Scott, or to poke fun at me. That's fine, too. We just like you to share it. And then, obviously, click the notification bell every time we put up a new video so you get notified. And make sure you never miss a High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour or a RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Thank you so much, everybody. We will wish you the best. Hopefully the ball bounces your way in the first week of the playoffs. And your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
As the Dizzle just pointed out in the YouTube chat right now, Utah just scoring another touchdown. For those of you who follow college football, and I think a lot of you who watch this show do because you probably play Dynasty and are looking at some of the prospects in this could throw a massive monkey wrench into the college football playoff if USC does indeed lose this game. Could we get 2 teams from the Big Ten in the college football playoff with only one from the SEC. That's anarchy. People in the rioting right now. I'm going to watch the end of this game. I hope you do the same. Thank you so much. We will see you on Tuesday with Dan Priestner, and we'll be back here on Friday with Farrell Elliott and another great guest. Thanks for watching, everybody.